How would you describe Jack, your dad?
He's the most Christ-like person that I know. Probably because he always puts everyone for himself. He always is looking towards, he's always looking towards others. I'm not going to say this very well. He genuinely is looking for opportunities to serve. Always looking for opportunities to serve. And he always does it without recognition. I find out all the time things that he has done. So I'll give you an example. So I was I'm in a new ward. I've only been in this ward for 3 years. And I was in Sunday school, and the Sunday school teacher asked for some examples. We were talking about Christ, and he wanted to know if he'd called on some people to give a story of an experience that they had had with someone who was Christ-like in their life. And my neighbor, who is very close to me, his name is Russell McKenna, and he is a lot younger than I am, but his family, his oldest brother is my age, and his family has been friends with our family forever. And his dad, Earl, was my dad's best friend in high school. And they moved from the Uinta Basin to Hyde Park when we did. Well, not when, shortly, I don't know if it was before or after us, but they had, I think, 6 or 7 boys. Maybe it was 6 boys and 1 daughter. And he was Earl was an institute teacher at Utah State. So they didn't have a huge income. And his wife was at home. And she didn't have another job. I think she taught piano lessons. But so they had a big family with not a huge income, but great people. So anyway, we're in church, and Russell was asked to talk about someone who was Christ-like. And as he's telling the story, he said, he's explaining, I knew the story. I didn't know this story, but I knew that his dad had passed away when he was only 5 years old. And he had died in a cornfield in their backyard. Down in my backyard in Hyde Park, and he had a heart attack, and it was really, really sad because he just dropped dead. And I'll never forget it. I remember it. I can't remember, I was probably a teenager at the time, but it was horrible for my dad. It was horrible for everyone because they had this little family. And she didn't obviously know how she was going to support this family. But Russell's telling the story. He said, I'll never forget that my mom was devastated, and she didn't know how she was going to make it. But there was a man who came into our life who I didn't know who he was at the time, but I was told just shortly before she died, she told me that this man had paid our house payment and our mortgage for years and years until our house was paid off. And as he's telling the story, I knew immediately that was my dad. He didn't tell me, but I knew as he's telling the story. He said, that man is the most Christ-like person that I know, that he did this for our family because we would never have been able to make it. We wouldn't have been able to survive. I don't know how we would have done it. And as I'm sitting there in the chair, he didn't make a point to say who it was, but I knew that was my dad. And I'd never been told that. All these years, that was years and years ago. And his mom had passed away since Russell and I live side by side, and we have a lot of connections, but I love their family. He has been my friend now and has a connection for me and my husband being married to each other. I wouldn't have probably been with my husband now if it wasn't for Russell. But as we live by each other, he'd never told me that. He never told me that. He just expressed that in that meeting. And then as we went to walk out of church, he kind of put his arm around me, and I knew that was my dad he was talking about. So I called my dad and told him, and I said, Dad, I never knew you did that. That's so amazing. And he just said, he kind of chuckled like, yeah, like it was no big deal. Like, yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's right. I did do that. But he never asked for any recognition. And I hear of things like that all the time, that he did this for someone, did this for that person. I hear it from the person, but that's the kind of things he's done. That's a huge thing, to pay someone's mortgage for 25 years, you know.
That's amazing.
So, and never to ever tell anyone about it. One time, he and my mom were in California, and he called me and asked me what we were up to, and I said, nothing, what are you doing? And he says, oh, I'm having the best time. I'm just driving around in the slums of LA, and I'm just passing out money to these kids that are poor, and I'm having the best time. You just give them a couple of dollars, and they're so excited they can hardly stand it. And he is just having the best time passing out dollar bills. So he's known as the $2 bill man, and we have lots of people who have $2 bills because of him. On Halloween, he gives $2 bills instead of candy. Actually, he has candy, but he'll give them the choice. You can either have this candy that will rot your teeth, or you can have this $2 bill. But if you get the $2 bill, you get also a lesson on how you should invest and save. So the kids line up with their parents to get the $2 bills at Halloween. It's kind of funny. I hear about people all the time that have come in clear across the valley so that they can get the $2 bill on Halloween. It's pretty funny.
How many does it give out, do you think?
I don't know, but he now gets the ones that have never been used. They're brand new. And he wants to tell people not to use them because these are valuable. Like, we have all of our family members get $2 bills for every event. And so we just put them into our safes at home. And so we just have stacks of bills, all of us. So I don't know what we'll ever do with them all because we won't be able to spend them. We have $2 bills, all of us. So when Dad was the bishop, we had an office in the front of our house, and that's where a lot of times in that day, they would come to our house to see the bishop. And so there was a little red light on the outside of his office, and if the red light was flipped on, that meant you just didn't go near the office. He was in conference with whoever was there. Stay clear. And then if the light was off, it was okay. We could knock on the door and go in. But a lot of times he was pretty much always counseling people, and he still is. He still thinks he's the bishop. I think people think he is the bishop. So he is constantly counseling people. The other day he was counseling someone about their they're getting married and on how they needed to, how they could carry on their future plans. And he's 89 years old, and he's still counseling people on marriage and finances and everything else. That's kind of what he does. We always call Dad whenever we have a problem. If it's anything to do with marriage, finances, children, anything, we call Dad. That's who we call. Seems like that's what you do. And he knows if it's one of us calling, he pretty much answers the phone immediately. But I think he answers the phone for whoever immediately. There are some times that he'll say, I'm so sorry, I got to take this call. And we think, okay, don't put us on hold again, Dad. Now, if he puts me on hold, I just hang up and I know he'll call me back. But sometimes he'll try to put you on hold because he wants to leave you hanging and take the next person because he doesn't want to leave anybody out. He wants to take care of everybody and balance all these balls at once. He never wants to not answer a phone call and not help somebody. So I've just learned, he'll come back to me, and he always does. I would do anything for him. He is hard to do things for because you don't feel like he needs anything, but what he really wants is just us to love him and recognize him for all the great things that he does. He is awesome. We love him a lot. He loves everybody, and he's so non-judgmental. He doesn't ever see the negative. He always sees the positive. I have never seen him be cross at anyone. I guess I can't say that. Back up. I'm going to say this. I have only seen him frustrated maybe twice. And once it was at me because he didn't like the way I talked to my mother. And so he was upset with me. But he can always see the glass full, never half empty. And he's tried to teach that to me, and I tend to be the opposite of him. And he keeps trying to remind me, even when I'm over 60 years old, that I need to be positive, because he always sees the positive in everything, always. He always forgives. In fact, I don't think he ever has to forgive, because he's never angry at anyone, but he always teaches us to forgive, and he asks us to please be forgiving and loving.